Hey, what's up, folks? This is Jesse with Keeping It Real Finance, the channel that always has your back and tells it like it is. Today's video is going to be all about the market FUD. This is fear, uncertainty, and doubt in many of the pieces that are in the crypto market news cycle right now. So what's tanking the market? Where do we think this market is headed? Are we in a bubble, right? These are all valid questions, and we're going to talk about them in today's video, so you're not going to want to miss this. So as always, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and if you click the bell, you'll be made aware whenever I post content just like this. And now, let's get it going. So it seems just about every dip in the crypto market is inspired by FUD one way or another. And we got more than enough FUD to go around today, all right? So I'm gonna kick this off by going through a few different news stories for you, tell you what exactly is happening, why this is bringing the market down, and then I'll also tell you what I think about it, as well as wrap it up at the end for where I think this market is headed, okay? So the first story that we have here is NFT market is like gambling in a casino. Letelier BNP Paribas CEO. This is from Decrypt.co. So in this article, John Egan suggests NFTs are currently like gambling in a casino. But then he also believes they could provide the bedrock for the virtual economy. So on the one hand, we have FUD, and on the other hand, we have hope. So we got the best of both worlds here. Now, the way I see it is buying an NFT is like buying any other piece of art, right? It's just digital art. And the value is in the eye of the buyer. So his view, though, is looking at it as if you were buying an asset, which you don't know if it will appreciate in value. Well, couldn't you say that for all art? I think you could, right? So this whole article is kind of ridiculous. And this is just another one of those things where it's something to talk about in the 24-hour news cycle. This is why it's a piece, right? Next article. Billionaire investor Ray Dalio. Bitcoin bans a good probability. So this is also from Decrypt.co. So this article is the textbook FUD from billionaire investor Ray Dalio that there's, quote, a good probability of governments banning Bitcoin in the future. So this is sort of piggybacking on recent news stories out of Nigeria and out of India about attempts to ban Bitcoin. And the reason why is because the governments aren't accurately tracking it, right? So his argument is that every country treasures its monopoly on controlling supply and demand. And they don't want other monies to be operating or competing because things can get out of hand. Well, yeah, that's true to an extent. But it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense if you break it down, okay? So first of all, nobody is intervening with any country's monopoly of their own fiat currency. That's not happening. In fact, crypto is just another currency, just as any other nation's currency would be if it were used in a different country, right? So fiat currency will continue to be their own, and they will continue to be in charge of it. Now, the way I see it, the real issue around crypto is regulation in the form of governments knowing where the money is, where it's going, and how they can get it, right? That's what this really comes down to, is regulation, which you'll hear again and again as a theme in the crypto space, is this talk of regulations. What happens when there's regulation? Will it tank the prices? Right? This is all about governments tracking the money. Now, I honestly think the only country that would have a good argument to ban crypto would probably be the United States. And the reason is because of the US dollar, or the most stable currency around the world that basically the entire world finance system is pegged on, the US dollar. So because of the US dollar, the US holds significant power around the world, including being able to sanction countries or individuals who are on the opposite end of US foreign policy. Now, I actually just saw a Vice News segment the other night on YouTube that followed Vitalik Buterin. So this is the founder, the main guy behind Ethereum outside of all the other co-founders. He's the main one, on a marketing tour throughout Russia. And unlike the US, which is on the losing end of crypto because of the dollar, therefore the US has been slow to embrace crypto, right? Russia is the opposite in the fact that they would be on the winning end of a weakening dollar, and therefore they're all for embracing crypto, and DeFi. Now, the funny thing here was that in the Vice segment, you could tell many of the government officials really didn't know how to interact with Vitalik at all. It was like they saw him as only a vessel holding the keys to their goals. And to that end, one of the officials actually mentioned at the end of the segment that what's happening in crypto is like when the internet first came out. And that meaning you're either going to embrace it or you're going to be left behind. So going back to the US dollar now, the real irony here is that because Wall Street has begun to embrace Bitcoin and crypto, and Wall Street always wins in this country because capitalism always wins, Wall Street will eventually have to make a decision, as Michael Saylor and Ross Stevens predicted, between the US dollar and Bitcoin. Now, reversing course from currencies that are globally accepted, becoming more and more accepted by the day, is unrealistic at this stage. So, going back to the original statements by Ray Dalio, any country who bans Bitcoin or crypto in general, it would only be to their own detriment at this point. So why on earth would you do that, right? So it's my view, personally, that all countries need to embrace crypto and DeFi to the benefit of their citizens. The sooner they do this, the better. It's trying to reconnect the world is what DeFi is all about. It's decentralizing it. This is a good thing overall for the planet. So the sooner countries can get on board, the better. Now, here's another story. This one's pretty funny. So this is an example of FUD in sort of a hilarious comedic way. Is the last dip is the deepest as wife leaves husband for buying more Bitcoin. What? That's from Cointelegraph, right? So here we have another negative connotation around Bitcoin, that it's breaking up marriages. And so the article detailed how Bitcoin is now breaking up this marriage in particular from a Reddit post of a husband where he detailed how his wife left him to go stay at her sister's place when he wouldn't sell his Bitcoin at $60,000 and instead acquired more. Ooh. Now, here's the main article, okay? So this is the main piece of FUD that's dragging down the market right now. So this one's really important. So there's sort of two pieces to this one. So first of all, the article is analysis. Bitcoin price falls below 53,000 as all eyes turn to tomorrow. This is from cryptonewsflash.com. So 6 billion in options contracts are set to expire tomorrow. This is Friday, 3/26. Tomorrow is when this happens. Now, the first part of this story, though, what also tags onto this is that the downturn also coincided with Jerome Powell talking to the U.S. Senate Banking Committee. Now, the concern here is that the rising bond yields may be an indicator of rising inflation and potentially rising interest rates. Maybe, right? However, what Jerome Powell actually said was that the Fed would not intervene and raise rates. So they don't think that's true. Come on, man. This reminds me of gas prices. That's like, well, we think something may happen, therefore we're upping the price 25 cents. Well, that's basically what happened here is we think this thing may happen, but the guy who's actually in charge says, no, that's not happening. Huh, okay. Now, the article then says that the dip could be due to the reallocation of assets from speculative assets like Bitcoin and tech stocks to safer assets. This is just a record scratcher right here, right? So let's insert the chart here and talk about what the safest asset is. So you can see here, looking at this chart, this is the same chart I talked about in my video on how to become a Bitcoin millionaire, is you look at the asset chart, it's not even close. The safest asset is Bitcoin by far. They don't even compare. So that statement in this article was kind of just ridiculous. That doesn't add up, it doesn't make any logical sense, and it doesn't line up with reality with the data that we actually have. So in this case, argument over. Now, at the end of the article, they mention a tweet by Jan Allman of Glassnode that says 6 billion in options are expiring tomorrow, right? So if you look at his chart, options traders essentially bet that Bitcoin would hit 80,000 by tomorrow, which was unrealistic, right? So when Bitcoin doesn't reach the strike number of 80,000, their positions will expire and $6 billion will be liquidated. Now, this is obviously bad for options traders, anybody who's trading options, but in reality, it actually has no direct effect on the Bitcoin price. So what it actually does here is it creates bad news around Bitcoin, okay? Now, this is also why I don't talk about options on this channel, is because in my view, they are far too risky for the average person. And as you can see, the odds of winning are with the house, not the player, right? So what you need to know though, this is the most important part of this video. What you need to know is that the stock to flow chart and the rainbow chart, this is the new one I just found, are still accurate, with stock to flow saying we should end the year somewhere just north or south of $87,000 for Bitcoin. The rainbow chart I actually just found the other day on the website blockchaincenter.net, which tracks the historical trading of Bitcoin. Now what's interesting is that you can see the cycles of the crypto market in this chart, and any other time in Bitcoin's history where it reached the orange level, it ultimately spiked in the darkest red or even above it, which if you haven't figured out yet is the full swing of altcoins season, okay? So looking at the chart, I believe we will continue trending upward throughout the remainder of this year. You can see the values of Bitcoin on the left. And so as of right now, we're in the quote, "Is this a bubble?" orange. And based on historical data, the answer is no, okay? Now, in order to reach the dark red, Bitcoin would have to be valued at over $100,000, which leads me to my next point, which is even more FUD from YouTubers, Twitterers, and anyone else talking about, are we in a bubble, what they're doing, and what you'll need to do. So this creates an uncertainty in the market when everybody starts talking about, well, are we actually in a bubble, right? And so, I've heard some major channels talking about locking in profits for this bull run, which entirely makes sense to me, right? Bitcoin goes in cycles. We know that. You can see it on the rainbow chart. It goes up, it goes down. Should you lock in profits? Yes, you should lock in some profits. Now, I've also heard channels I follow talking about selling their holdings at the peak of the bull run and waiting to get back in at the bottom of the bear market. Well, if you look at the rainbow chart, that could be a 2-year window, right? So here's what I think. First of all, I think locking in profits along the way up to the dark red portion of the rainbow chart makes sense. Realize enough gains that you feel good about your investments. In other words, lock in profits on any coins you may be swing trading in particular, okay? Next, on the other hand, I think liquidating positions and waiting on the sidelines for 2 years or the market to bottom out seems like kind of an odd strategy, all right? And I think there's a way to work through this when you know the market is going into a downturn, and here's how. So I think a much better strategy, in my view, is that if you're going to liquidate your altcoin holdings at the peak of the market, then convert them into a stable coin like USDC and earn massive interest in Voyager or Celsius. Referral links in the video description. On Voyager, you can get 9%. On Celsius, you can get somewhere like 15%. So as the market's going into a downswing, why not just stick your money there? Continue to make compounding interest in the meantime. That's kind of a no-brainer, right? I don't know if everybody thinks about that, though, because oftentimes stable coins get overlooked in this crypto space. Now, that way you lock in your profits, but you also continue to accrue interest the entire way down, right? Now, what about Bitcoin, Jesse? So should I sell it? The answer, no, I don't think you should. And its historical returns are at 230% a year, just as we showed in that prior chart. If you want to sell the greatest performing asset of all time when the market cycles lower, the only thing you're accomplishing is losing your position, in my view. A better view would probably be to accumulate more, or, as Warren Buffett says, be greedy when others are fearful, right? Now, lastly, if your altcoin holdings are based on solid projects with legit use cases, then selling your stake only undermines the project. So in other words, I think you should continue to support the projects you believe in, no matter the market momentum, and you'll be rewarded in the end. I believe in that. I think, good companies are good companies, period. So to give you an example, somebody like Apple, for example. Well, when the stock market was in a downturn, do you just can all of your Apple stock? Or do you hold on to it and continue to add more for when the market goes up, then you have an even larger holding? That's the point I'm making here, right? So personally, I'll be sticking with the projects I believe in through the ups and the downs, all right? So that's it for today's video. I hope this makes sense to you. There is more than enough FUD to go around. Obviously, I didn't mention every single news story all over across the internet, but I think I've hit the highlights here on what's causing the most recent dip. And really, it's just sort of a product of the 24-hour news cycle. The different crypto outlets need things to report on. It's not always going to be positive. It is what it is. But you need to be able to read between the lines of what's actually happening here. Don't get lost in the minutia, but actually look at the facts. All we care about is the facts. And that's why I showed you the chart with the rainbow, because that's based on historical data. Now, the guy who makes that chart, he goes by the name Hogler, I think is what it is. Holger is what it is. And he's on Twitter, and you can follow him there. The chart and the whole page translates between German and English. He's also got a chart on there on altcoin season. There's tons of really good info on that site, so highly recommend you go to that, check it out, follow him on Twitter. It's based on historical data, and as he says, it's not a future predictor, but if you look at the historical data, we got 10 years to go on here, you kind of get an idea of where things are most likely to go based on the odds. So that's the point. The entire point of this video, to give you a good analogy, is up until now, you've been throwing darts at a dartboard in the dark, right? You know roughly where that dartboard is, you're throwing the darts, but you have no idea if you're hitting anything. Well, what I just did was turn on the lights. So that's it, that's today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, make sure to hit the like button. As always, don't forget to follow me on Twitter at KIR Finance, where I'm tweeting and retweeting on a regular basis. Lots of good info there. And for a friendly reminder, this is Jesse with Keeping It Real Finance, the channel that always has your back and tells it like it is. And I will see you on the next one. Later.